Chapter 1. The Switch. The palace was a battlefield dressed in silk. Petals lined the marbled floors, golden chandeliers shimmered like fallen stars, and 100 servants buzzed like panicked bees beneath the oppressive silence of disaster. For a royal wedding, it should have been perfect. For the house of Velius, it had to be. But the groom was gone. And not just any groom, Prince Aurelian Vale, the last refined jewel of a disgraced alpha bloodline, had vanished 2 days before the ceremony. And now, chaos had teeth. In a chamber guarded by Enigma soldiers and oiled secrecy, Cassian Vale stood in shackles. He wasn't dressed in princely silks, nor groomed like a proper alpha. No, he wore nothing but a torn shirt, mud-stained boots, and a scowl sharp enough to cut through bone. "You want me," he said, his voice dripping venom, "to marry him?" The advisor flinched. "It is necessary. For the alliance. You share the same blood." "From the same bastard father who never claimed me," Cassian snapped. "That doesn't make me royalty. That makes me a convenient pawn." "And yet," another minister said, eyes cold, "you are the last eligible alpha with royal blood. If we break the treaty now, House Vale will be destroyed." Cassian spat at his feet. Maybe it deserves to be. But he had no choice. They drugged him, dressed him, and stuffed him into velvet like a coffin. The wedding would happen, even if he had to be dragged to the altar. The ceremonial hall was a mosaic of power. Tall arches soared like ambitions. Enigma banners fluttered like warning signs. The crowd buzzed with whispers. "Is that not Aurelian? He looks rough. Who is he?" Cassian stalked down the aisle like a wolf in chains. He could smell the scent of his intended, sharp, cold cinnamon and crushed smoke. Thorn Velius, Enigma heir, unrivaled, unreachable, untouched, and worse, unbothered. Thorn stood at the altar like a king already bored of his crown. Silver buttons lined his high-collared jacket. His pale hair was slicked back with military precision, but his eyes, those obsidian voids, never left Cassian. He didn't blink. He didn't smirk. He only watched. And Cassian hated how his skin prickled beneath that gaze. "I thought you'd be prettier," Cassian muttered as they stood before the officiant. Thorn tilted his head. "And I thought you'd at least try to run before insulting me." "Give it time," Cassian muttered, eyes narrowing. "I plan to ruin this anyway." The vows began. Cassian interrupted, loudly. "I, Cassian Vale, absolutely do not take this emotionless mannequin as my bonded." Gasps, panic, but Thorn laughed, softly. "Let him speak," Thorn told the priest. "He has a sharp tongue, I like that." Cassian blinked. Was this man mocking him? So he escalated. He poured wine on Thorn's shoes, ripped the ceremonial sash mid-ritual, even tried to fake a fainting spell mid-oath. Thorn let him. No anger, no outrage, just a tilt of the lips, amusement, pure and unfiltered. The chaos only seemed to delight him. And by the time the bond mark was appearing, glowing faintly on Cassian's neck, he realized something horrifying. Thorn had expected this. Later, in the cold, golden silence of the wedding chamber, Cassian stood by the window, untying his cloak with trembling fingers. "You're not disappointed?" he asked, voice raw. "Your perfect wedding, ruined. Your perfect prince, gone. You got the broken one instead." Thorn approached from behind, slow and smooth like death in a silk robe. "I never wanted perfect," he said quietly. Cassian turned, jaw clenched. "Then what did you want?" Thorn smiled. "I wanted a storm, not a puppet." Chapter 2. Bite me, then bind me. The marriage chamber was too warm. Cassian paced like a caged beast, still in his ceremonial clothes, still seething. The thick silence grated on his nerves as much as the scent of the man who sat, perfectly poised, by the bed. Thorn Velius, Enigma heir, the very man he was now bonded to. Legally, politically, physically, disgustingly. Cassian glared at him. "You've got 5 seconds to unbind this farce before I throw you out the window." Thorn didn't even blink. "You think I wouldn't let you?" Cassian narrowed his eyes. Try me. A smile tugged at Thorn's lips. Oh, I intend to, but not by fighting. There was something in that smile. Wicked, knowing, predatory. Cassian's instincts screamed. He backed away, boots hitting the edge of the carpet. You're planning something. I planned everything, Cassian. You smug, manipulative. Yes, keep insulting me. I love it when you talk dirty, darling. Cassian made a sound halfway between a growl and a scream. I'm leaving. He turned, reached the door. Locked? Of course it was locked. You think you can keep me here like some royal broodmare? I don't think, Thorn replied. I know. Cassian fought. He threw a chair. Thorn caught it. He punched. Thorn dodged. He kicked, bit, scratched, and for once Thorn dropped the composed mask. He grabbed Cassian's wrists, spun him against the wall, pressed close. You want to fight? He whispered in his ear. Fine, but I play dirty. Cassian's vision spun. His skin burned. A scent, too sweet, too sharp, hit him all at once. Pheromones, not normal ones, enhanced, artificial, Enigma blood grade. And laced with something Cassian couldn't fight. His heat ignited. You bastard, he gasped, stumbling, his body flushing red-hot as his inner alpha instincts twisted in betrayal. Thorn held him gently, carefully, like a man handling something precious and wild. I didn't want to do it this way, he said, but you would have kept running. And can't have that. You triggered my heat lock. Don't worry. I'll take care of you, even if you hate me for it. Cassian snarled, shoved him, cursed him. But his body betrayed him. The bond deepened, pulsing hot and irreversible. Thorn caught him as he collapsed, trembling, drenched in scent and fury. The night became heat and haze and struggle. And in that chaos, Thorn was gentle, possessive, patient, worshipping. Cassian woke up sore. Every bone ached. His throat was dry. His wrists bore red marks from where he'd tried to claw his way out of Thorn's arms. But the bed was warm, the sheets clean. A glass of water sat beside a tray of toast and jam. And Thorn? Thorn was reading, on a chair by the bed, calm, like the night hadn't been madness. Cassian blinked at him. You're still here? Thorn turned a page. Of course, I'm your husband, not by choice. Thorn smiled brightly. Oh, you chose me. You just don't remember it yet. Cassian picked up a pillow and threw it at him. The next few days were unbearable. Cassian couldn't leave the chamber. The guards outside had orders not to hurt him, but not to let him out either. Thorn visited him morning and night, brought him books, food, smart-mouthed banter. Weeks later, you'll get used to me, Thorn said one evening. I'd rather chew glass. I can arrange that, but it's not recommended during early pregnancy. Cassian rolled his eyes, then froze. What? Thorn blinked. Too calm. You've been sleeping a lot. You threw up this morning. You cried at a baby goat in that animal documentary. Cassian stared. That doesn't mean... Thorn stood and crossed the room slowly. Let's just say, Enigma blood is very fertile, especially when the bond's sealed during heat. Cassian went very still. I'm going to kill you. Thorn cupped his face gently. Then I'll die knowing I gave you a piece of both of us to hold. Cassian's fist connected with his jaw. Later that night, Cassian sat alone, hand resting unconsciously over his stomach. He hated Thorn, hated what he'd done, the bond, the trickery, the heat lock. But his heart thudded in his ears as he whispered to himself, barely audible, what if he's right? Thorn, watching from the shadows, whispered to no one. I didn't steal you. I just helped fate bring you to me. Chapter 3. Chains of Affection. The first attempt happened during breakfast. Cassian smiled sweetly across the table, buttered his toast, and stabbed a fork into the side of Thorn's hand. Thorn didn't flinch, just raised an eyebrow. Need another knife? He asked calmly, blood dripping onto his napkin. Didn't know enigmas were this hard to kill, Cassian muttered, sitting back. We're built for love, Thorn said deadpan, and very creative revenge. Cassian glared. You're not funny. Thorn gave him a slow, infuriating smile. Then why are you smiling? Cassian realized too late that he was smiling. The second attempt came that night. Cassian pretended to be asleep. Thorn entered the bedroom quietly, in sleepwear that looked criminally expensive. Cassian sprang like a cat, wrapped the curtain cords around Thorn's throat and pulled. Thorn stumbled, more shocked than hurt. Trying to strangle your husband? He rasped, unwrapping the cord without urgency. Trying to divorce my husband, Cassian growled. I'm flattered you waited for me in bed, though, Thorn said. Progress. Cassian screamed. On day 5, Thorn brought a punching dummy to the bedroom. It wore a painted, smug face that looked suspiciously like Aurelian. Cassian paused mid-sulk. Is this a joke? Thorn shrugged. You said you wanted to hit something beautiful and spineless. He seemed like a perfect model. Cassian blinked. That's actually thoughtful, Thorn said. Creepy, Cassian corrected, but useful. He punched the dummy, again and again, then added little horns to its head with a marker. Thorn watched from the corner of the room like a proud husband at a toddler's art show. His darling was perfect in every way. The palace staff began to notice something strange. Cassian was still angry, still sarcastic, still impossible. But he wasn't trying to escape anymore. He sat by the fire with a book, one of his favorite books, imported from a tiny back alley shop in the capital. He found all his favorite foods waiting at lunch: spicy roasted meat, no onions, double cheese. He even found a wardrobe filled with black and red clothes, his preferred shades. And at night, the blanket smelled like rosemary and cinnamon, his comfort scents. Cassian accused the maids. They all denied it. Then he confronted Thorn. You bribing everyone to babysit me now? Thorn tilted his head. I don't trust others to spoil you properly. I'm not a damn cat. Thorn stepped closer, brushing Cassian's hair behind his ear. You hiss like one, but you've also started purring. Cassian kicked him in the shin. That night, Cassian dreamt of his childhood. Of being locked away, hidden from royal eyes, told to act like he didn't exist. And a strange memory surfaced, one he hadn't realized was real. A pair of eyes watching from across the courtyard. Always watching. Not with pity, but with want. Flashback 7 years ago. Rain pelted the stone garden. A younger Cassian knelt beside a broken sword, bleeding from a split lip, panting. He'd fought the guards again, lost again. From across the wall, hidden in shadows, Thorn watched. He clenched his fists when he saw the blood. His voice was low, inaudible, as he whispered Cassian's name. He came back every week after that, tracking, learning. He noted every scar, the way Cassian flinched when people shouted, how he stood with his back to the wall, the way he devoured books and hated sweet tea. He fell in love not with a prince, but with a fire-breathing wounded alpha who refused to break. And he wanted him. Not tamed, not prettied. Real, raw, furious, Cassian. Back in the present, Cassian woke up gasping, heart thudding. The dream felt too real. He walked into the hall where Thorn was scribbling notes, surrounded by papers. How long have you been watching me? Cassian asked quietly. Thorn didn't look up. Since the first time you screamed at your father for calling you illegitimate. Cassian's breath caught. Thorn stood and approached slowly. You were always lightning, and I wanted to be the one who survived your storm. Silence. Why? Cassian whispered. Why me? Thorn reached out and touched his cheek, reverent. Because you were never meant to bow, and I wanted a mate who could kill me. And then maybe hold me afterward. Cassian stared at him for a long time, then turned and walked away. Only this time, he didn't slam the door. Chapter 4. The Betrayal. The garden was too quiet. Cassian sat under the shade of the royal magnolia tree, hand resting lightly on his swollen belly. Boots kicked off, scowling at a bluebird. I hate peace, he muttered. It makes me suspicious. He'd been calm lately. Too calm. No escape attempts, no sarcastic threats, not even a half-hearted stab at Thorn's wrist during breakfast. That alone was enough to concern the palace staff. And Thorn? Thorn had been extra careful. Too careful. He brought tea Cassian liked, massaged his ankles, read poetry in a dramatic, terrible voice just to make Cassian laugh. And Cassian did laugh. But something clawed at his gut worse than pregnancy cravings. Something felt off. That something arrived in the form of a dusty box delivered by a nervous-looking guard. It was from an old Vale estate. Family records, he said. Cassian didn't trust it. So naturally, he tore it open immediately. Inside, letters, receipts, transaction files. And one contract. Selling. Alpha Cassian Vale, bastard-born heir. Status, fertile, unbonded, unprotected. Destination, black market auction, Southern Port City. Buyer, confidential. Approved by Prince Aurelion Vale. The next thing that broke was a vase, then a chair, then the wall. Cassian burst into Thorn's private study like a hurricane, 5 months pregnant and dangerously silent. Cassian. You knew. Thorn froze. I did. The room went deathly still. Say it, Cassian hissed. Say every word. Thorn's mask cracked. His voice dropped, low, tired, cracked with something that sounded like guilt but smelled like obsession. Aurelian made the deal 2 weeks before the wedding. Said you were a burden, that no one would notice if you disappeared. I intercepted the contract the day before you were supposed to be shipped off like livestock. Cassian's blood went cold. What? I couldn't let them have you, Thorn whispered. I wouldn't. So I made it look like Aurelian fled and had you brought to me instead. It was the only way. Cassian shook his head. So the bond, the wedding, everything. You manipulated it all. Yes. You made me fall for me. Yes. You used my heat. To bind you, to save you, Thorn interrupted, stepping forward, eyes shining now. I didn't do it because I'm kind, Cassian. I did it because I'm obsessed. You were meant to belong to someone else's cage. I just built you a prettier one. Cassian stepped back, heart pounding. You are insane. Thorn dropped to his knees. And he broke. His hands trembled as he grabbed Cassian's wrist, not to restrain him, but to anchor himself. I know, he choked out, voice cracking. I know what I did. And I'd do it again, Cassian, in a blink. Because if the world decided to tear you apart, I'd rather be the one who gets to put you back together. Tears streaked down his cheeks, and yet his words pulsed with the same sickening, beautiful possessiveness as always. Hate me all you want, Thorn whispered, pressing a kiss to Cassian's wrist. But live, stay. Let me worship you. Cassian stared down at him, something unsteady flickering in his eyes. You really would do it all again. I would rewrite the sky, Thorn whispered, just to keep you under it. Cassian didn't speak for a long time. Then, finally, lips curling into something that wasn't quite a smile, wasn't quite a threat, he said, Then help me ruin them. Thorn blinked. What? I want everyone who ever tried to sell me, hide me, betray me, to suffer. And you're going to make it happen. Thorn stood instantly, face alight like a man being handed holy war. I will burn their houses. I will poison their pets. I will bankrupt their great-grandchildren. Cassian blinked. I was expecting yes, love, not a war speech. Thorn tilted his head. You told me to destroy things. That is my love language. Cassian rolled his eyes. You're disgusting. You chose me. I did not. You're still here. I'm 5 months pregnant, not stupid. Where would I go? Exactly, Thorn smirked. Later that evening, Cassian returned to his chambers to find a new punching dummy, this time with Aurelian's entire family tree printed on it. He couldn't help it. He laughed. It was short and reluctant and completely unfair. He also didn't stop Thorn when he wrapped a warm shawl around his shoulders later that night. And when Thorn kissed the crown of his head before bed, Cassian didn't curse. He just whispered, very softly, I still hate you. Thorn whispered back, but you're mine. Cassian would never admit he'd fallen for him. But he had. Thorn had pulled him from a life of chains, only to wrap him in velvet ones made of obsession. And damn it all, he liked the way they felt. Chapter 5. You were meant to hate me. The cleansing. They called it a negotiation. Thorn called it an execution in designer clothing. One by one, every noble who ever whispered against Cassian Vale found themselves politely invited to a royal conference. They came with smiles. They left with bankruptcy, scandals, blacklisted bloodlines, and in one case, an allergic reaction from tea. Thorn personally tampered with because the woman had once called Cassian a vulgar farm-born brat. She now referred to herself as a reformed chicken farmer, after Thorn repurposed all her estates into free-range poultry sanctuaries. As for Aurelian, he was stripped of his titles, dumped in a glass mansion with no staff, no funding, and only one framed picture of Cassian duct-taped to the ceiling with "Remember what you lost," written in Thorn's handwriting. Oh, and there was a motion-activated speaker that played "Cry Me a River" whenever he cried too loud. Cassian watched all of this unfold with a glass of juice, legs propped on Thorn's lap, very pregnant and very satisfied. He didn't even blink as Thorn set fire to the final deed of the last corrupt lord. "You're evil," he said with a fond smirk. Thorn kissed his hand. "I learned from the best." Cassian sighed happily. "I want a plaque above our bed that says revenge is foreplay." Thorn made a note. "I'll have it engraved in obsidian." The labor that shook the palace. The first contraction hit during brunch. Cassian dropped his fork, blinked, and said, "Oh no." Thorn jumped up like the room was on fire. "Are you dying?" "No," Cassian said, breathless. "But I will kill you if this hurts more than betrayal." Cue chaos. Thorn sprinted down the halls, shirt half-buttoned, yelling, "The prince is in labor. Prepare the nursery. Sanitize everything. I need 7 midwives and a flame-resistant blanket." Cassian, waddling after him, shouted, "I said I wanted to give birth in the library." And so he did. Yes, in the Royal Velius Library, with screaming contractions between aisles of leather-bound books and 3 healers trying not to cry as Cassian threatened them with a hardcover titled "Male Alpha Anatomy and All Its Useless Glory." Thorn was calm. By calm, we mean he fainted once, recovered, and cried at every push. "You're doing amazing, my love. Shut up and shove a bookcase into me if that helps." At one point, Cassian grabbed his collar and hissed, "If the child comes out looking like you, I'm naming them Vengeance." "Beautiful," Thorn sobbed. "Gender-neutral and terrifying. I love it." And then it happened. The room went quiet. Then a cry. Tiny, piercing, powerful. Cassian collapsed back into the pillows, sweat-soaked, snarling, glowing. Thorn held their baby like it was the most sacred object he'd ever touched. Cassian cracked one eye open. "Does it have your dramatic cheekbones? It sneezed like you. Itch, already doomed." But when Thorn laid their child against his chest, Cassian didn't speak again. He just blinked, once, twice, and curled his fingers around the baby's tiny ones. "So small. Your heart's been too big for too long," Thorn whispered. "You needed something this small to balance it." Cassian scoffed, then sniffled, then punched Thorn softly in the chest and hissed, "If you tell anyone I cried, I'll feed your underwear drawer to the fireplace." Thorn leaned close and whispered, "Too late. I cried enough for both of us." Their happy ending was a mess, naturally. Cassian refused to call it parenting. He called it survival with style. Thorn wrote lullabies with warlock-composed melodies. Cassian built pillow forts with trap doors in case of royal assassins. They taught the baby to snarl before it could say papa. And bedtime stories? Let's just say the royal heir now believed dragons weren't real, but revenge is essential. Every now and then, Cassian would stare at Thorn with a look that said, "You absolute lunatic." And Thorn would smile like he'd won the universe. Because he had. He had Cassian Vale, storm and chaos and sharp tongue and scarred fists. He had him bound, bonded, and deeply, chaotically loved. Even if Cassian still said, "I hate you," Thorn would reply with the softest smile, "I know. I love you too." And so, Cassian never admitted he loved Thorn. But he stayed. He laughed. He warmed. And every time their child grinned with sharp little baby teeth, Cassian whispered, "You were meant to hate me." To which Thorn would answer, "But you stayed anyway."